Thanks, Terry. And joining us now is Henry Rotich, the Cabinet Secretary for the National Treasury. Thank you for coming in. I know you gave a lengthy explanation today in Parliament, but, you know, when you say the government is not broke, but there aren't sufficient resources to go around, sounds like a case of semantics. And really the fear is that Kenya is going the Greece way. Well,
as I'd already said earlier, you know, we don't have those financial crises that have been said, and we obviously cannot go Greek way. If you look at Greek numbers, definitely with respect to, you know, their debt ratios were way high. I mean, we cannot compare with Kenya with a debt level of something like less than 50% of GDP. So obviously there are indicators that show really that a country is heading into a crisis, but we are not yet there. The challenge that we have obviously is you know, trying to match, you know, our revenues with demands that are coming from the ministries, and it's compounded by the fact that obviously globally we have had challenges of liquidity, and also domestically that has manifested itself into the domestic market by way of you know, the exchange rate that has weakened, and in that case we've had difficulties in raising resources domestically to smooth out our mismatch between receipts and demand for exchequer.
And yet that was the reason why the Eurobond was being floated, specifically so that you do not have to come to the domestic market. The President assured that that would not happen. So what went wrong? Well,
the Eurobond was financed the budget for 2014-2015. We are now in the budget of 2015-2016. And we avoided domestic borrowing most of last financial year because of the resources we got from the Eurobond. So obviously if we had not floated the Eurobond, we would definitely be talking different numbers in terms of interest rates that we are going to obtain in the last financial year. As you know, interest rates came down. There were some were even 8% in the T-bill, and exchange
now they're through the roof.
Yeah, of course, this is a global phenomenon. Also, the domestic market liquidity has tightened because of course, the central bank has been trying to deal with the exchange rate weakening, and in that case, interest rates had to be raised in that respect. But obviously, we do not want to exacerbate the problem, and that is why we have decided to, you know, substitute our domestic borrowing with other foreign borrowing, so that we maintain, we bring down interest rates in this financial year.
Oh, but you said, you know, we're not doing as badly as Greece, but some would say that we're headed there, even with the international borrowing and the debt levels that are currently, you know, we're currently witnessing. And they say it's this: number one, we're simply just not living within our means. Your austerity measures don't seem to have worked. Either your cabinet colleagues are ignoring you, or they were not rigorous enough, or further, even if the tax man is not meeting necessarily his demands, that we're not doing enough to create a larger revenue base, and neither are we sealing the loopholes in terms of corruption. How do you respond to that?
Well, first, we are not heading the Greek way. I told you earlier on that our debt ratios are sustainable. All these have been, you know, you look at reports from international financial institutions, very clear. They have actually even done assessment of our debt. It is sustainable. Greece's debt was not sustainable because they lived beyond their means. Are we living beyond our means?
I think there'd be a chorus, yes.
No, that's
you don't think so?
You know, when you see a deficit, obviously it means okay, expenditures are higher than and revenue. But you feel that by borrowing, but borrowing in a manner that does not undermine your solvency as a country. So basically, what we are saying is that we have programmed our borrowing in a manner that doesn't create any, you know, any challenges or solvency problems going forward. For the case of Greece, it was different. Most of their borrowing went to consumption. We are not borrowing to consume, but investing in infrastructure.
And yet at the same time, there are those who feel that even with the investment in infrastructure, it's just a little too much too soon. We're biting off more than we can chew. And here you are going to the markets again looking for a $750 million syndicated loan. Loans on loans on loans.
Well, as I said, you know, we had programmed this to borrow domestically, but we are substituting that. You know, there's always a feeling that when you borrow, it's a bad thing.
Mm-hmm.
As long as you are able to repay and you are borrowing to finance the right expenditures, then you will have the capacity going forward to repay, and you don't have any solvency problem. So I think this notion of saying borrowing is a bad thing, we are going to add into these things, is not right. As long as you do responsible borrowing, which we are doing, and we have demonstrated our debt is sustainable, and there is no cause of alarm at all.
You're talking about borrowing for the right things, yet recurrent expenditure tops our list. So Kenyans would argue that no, we are not borrowing for the right things. We're borrowing to repay salaries. We're borrowing to pay, car loans and mileage allowances, as we've seen.
For your information, revenues. Our revenues covers 90–95% of our recurrent expenditure. So by that alone, it means yes, we are left with a small space for development. Then the entire borrowing we are doing is for development. In other countries, or also in the Greece case, their revenues were not covering recurrent expenditure alone. So obviously you are borrowing to finance recurrent. In our case, we have not enriched it, and we've seen how we have tried to deal with the issue of recurrent costs, particularly issues of the wage bill. I think it has been very clear the way we have said that we don't want to go that route, because ultimately we will end up now borrowing just to pay salaries, and that is why we have said salaries review must be consistent with the capacity and affordability of the country going forward, and that is exactly what we are doing. And other measures that we are doing to deal with the leakages and all that is to ensure that we have more space to finance productive expenditure.
All right, we're about to wind up, but first, there are those who say, the ones who will agree with you that the government is not broke will say, no, the government is not broke, it's just simply corrupt. All you have to do is add zeros, as was in the NYS case. Is it time to admit that IFMIS has been a failure, or at the very least a major challenge in terms of disbursement of funds, or even curbing corruption, which is what it was touted as, technology as a solution, being able to track funds and keep accountability?
That's not right. I think a lot of people have said the tampering and all that. IFMIS is a very good tool, and it has been used in every country. This is where countries are going, e-government. This is we are automating our procedures, and it is a good thing to do that. It enhances transparency. If we didn't have IFMIS, we would have a bigger challenge than now as we speak. County governments would have had a difficulty in managing their finances in the absence of the capacity. So there are many things. No country now is still doing things manual. We have moved to, and IFMIS is one of the strong tools that are being used. In the issue of this is a tamper-proof. This has been tested. It has never happened in other countries. So this talk of that IFMIS can be changed and all that is not true at all.
So you're saying in the NYS case, where it was a report indicates that it was zeros that were ended. There
was investigation done, and
this is actually a report of an investigation that concludes that.
I haven't seen that report exactly, but we have seen ourselves. I mean, the investigators have come and checked the system, and there was no manipulation at all.
I will let that be, since you said you don't know what I'm talking about. I'll have a final question for you, and it's really about the policy regime. We've seen, forecasts of sunny blue skies ahead into 2030. That's what World Bank is saying, that Kenya will have perhaps the best growth, I think, in sub-Saharan Africa, etc. And the question I always ask when it comes to talking about a growing economy is that if it's not growing in tandem with my economy, my pocket, then what economic growth are we talking about? There's also the feeling that the Kibaki administration and the current administration have really been focusing on, growing the business environment, getting power costs down, good infrastructure, etc., and that this should be passed on to the consumer as a benefit, that costs will go down. But we haven't seen that sort of nicety, if you like, from businesses passing on that goodwill to consumers. Is it time to rethink our policy regime so that it's people first, not business first? Well,
it takes time, some of the policies, to translate fully to the benefits that you are talking about. Building a railway takes 5 years. The benefit of lower transport costs will happen once the locomotives start delivering goods at a lower price. So there's time or lag that has to take place for all these benefits to come. But they are essential. You must have cheap power. To have cheap power, you have to invest in electricity. To have good transport, decent transport, you have to invest in good roads. You have to invest in that. And then that now facilitates the private sector to grow. And it's that growth that puts money in your pocket. But I also agree that as we also grow, we also need to spend. The quality of our expenditure is important, and that's why we are putting money on health, we're putting money on agriculture, we're putting money on education and on social protection, because this is where the Kenyans, majority of Kenyans feel, so that we have growth that is inclusive, and we take the Kenyans together with the growth that we are programming.
This is our biggest budget so far, but it seems like more money, more problems.
No. Budgets will grow. Our economy is growing. You will hear now we are in trillions, 2 trillions. 2 years down the line we'll be in 3 trillions, and obviously because we are expanding economy. So the thing is that relative to the size of the economy, it does not change. If you look at expenditure, government expenditure to GDP, it's around 28%, whether it is in trillions or it is in thousands and all that. And you need that to grow. So I don't see why you are worried about economy growing, as long as we are doing the right things.
All right. That is Treasury Cabinet Secretary Henry Rotich. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
And time for us to take a short break. We're back with more news on Citizen Live at 9. Remember, Opinion Court is also coming up. We're discussing the Waki report. You don't want to miss it. Stay with us.